The graph choice chart is a chart that essentially leads the students through which graph they need to make for their different data sets. So what's really nice about the graph choice chart is it starts by asking them, what are they doing? What are they thinking about or analyzing in their data? And it's a flow chart, like a yes or no, where they can say, yes, I am going to be discussing, the variability. Yes, I need to make, okay, I have a choice. I can make a frequency plot and go from there. Or say, oh no, I'm not really doing that. Or I'm comparing two different groups. And it's a really good jumping board or springboard for students to say, where do I begin? What direction do I go? I have this data, and I'm not quite sure which graph to make. It's a tool to help them try to figure out which graph to use.
We spend a lot of time taking students into the field and having them measure things and ask questions and collect data. And we've found that much of the time students would collect data and not know at all what to do with it. So one of the first steps we would coach them is to make a graph so they could look at it. And we saw that when they were making graphs, they really had no way to decide what kind of graph to make. They would pretty much invariably make either bar charts or line plots, a few pie charts. But generally the graph didn't really match what they were trying to the question that they were trying to ask, and a lot of times their question wasn't clear. So, so the disconnect between their question and the graph they were trying to make led us to think about what kind of tool could help students make that deliberate choice. So we developed this graph choice chart, and the whole purpose of it is to encourage students to state their question clearly, decide what kind of a question it is, and then decide what kind of a graph to make based on that question.
So I found the graph choice chart to be very useful to helping me develop the sequence of how to actually tackle data, and it gives the students the same information to tackle it themselves, so they have a plan and they know why they're doing something versus just doing it because they're told to do it.
Instead of me just telling the students, this is the type of graph you need to make, I think it makes them think about what they're doing. They can put more of themselves into the work that they're doing. It gives them some validity that their work is their work and not just relying on me to tell them what to do.
Well, it helps my teaching because I don't always have to be telling students what type of graph to make, and so even sometimes with my some of the resources I use, they'll be telling them a certain type of graph, and the students will say, but that's not the type of graph we should make, so that they are understanding that maybe a different type of graph would better display the data.
I think it's a really good tool, and it really has helped me as a teacher because it gives them something concrete to actually look at. When students have questions, they want to go back and reference something. They want to try to figure it out, and this is giving them a tool where they don't always have to come ask me. They can say, oh, I know I have this in my notes, this is in my binder, I can go back and reference it, I can figure this out. And then soon it's just going to become, second nature to which graph they're going to make. So it's scaffolding their learning on which graph to make when, until they're confident to have those skills on their own.
What I learned initially is that students really didn't know how to choose. They always just went to whatever graph they'd always done. Their big favorite was pie charts and bar graphs, and they finally seem to have this tool helps them, and so now they can use it, and hopefully they'll internalize it with time.
Helps the students to realize that you can have different types of questions, and I try to get them to go back. What was the question that we had for this lab? How does your data relate to that question? Can you use the examples of questions that are on the graph choice chart to help you figure out the best kind of graph to make for that type of question?
I've also found the chart to be very useful because it allows you to really focus on the question so you can figure out not just making a graph that looks pretty, but a graph that's functionable, and you're able to really tackle what that question is to answer what you really are there to do.
That's a good question. I like to have a graph choice chart up on the wall in my room where students can come up periodically and look at it in a big form. I also give them a smaller one that they have in their binder, and they can look at that as they're making choices about which type of graph should I make now, because students have trouble picking out the type of graph that's best for any situation.
Kids all have a copy of it, and they're supposed to keep it in their notebook. Whenever we do a lab or we look at data sets, I have them get it out, try to use it. At a point during the year, it becomes a habit. With a lot of them, they'll just automatically know, okay, we've got to set this stuff up and we've got to make a graph. I have all this number of stuff in front of me, what do I do with it? They'll start getting the graph choice chart out, looking. A lot of my kids will look at the examples first, so they'll look here in the middle instead of over on the left-hand side, because they'll want to see, well, where does my question fit? And they have found it easier to start here and then go backwards to make sure it fits, and then figure out the graph.
I try to urge them to look at the question and follow the flow chart. And if they follow and yes and no till the end, they will get a graph that's going to work for their data.